Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are back in War Thunder having a look at the suggestions passed to developers, and it's time to have a look once again at July 2022. This time we are bundling in naval and also helicopters. There is 3 helicopters this time and only 1 naval piece, so kind of a surprise. Usually it's the other way around, but a welcome one. So let's get into the vehicles. For the naval option, we have Georgios Averof, which is a very interesting vehicle. It is the last remaining armored cruiser and one of the oldest warships in preservation anywhere in the world. It was used during multiple European conflicts and also is the oldest capital ship to serve in both of the world wars. Right now, it is actually a museum ship that you can go and visit. Its story starts in the First Balkan War, when it broke out in October of 1912. Then Captain Konturiotis of the Averof was promoted Rear Admiral, leading the Greek fleet at the Battle of Elae and Lemnos. Averof proved herself very capable at Elae in December, when Konturiotis took independent action of the ship from the Hellenic fleet and crossed the T of the Ottomans, almost single-handedly forcing them to retreat. Her superior speed, armament, and armor was unmatched by the older Ottoman pre-dreadnoughts, and in both battles stood resilient, taking little damage at the expense of the Turks. Averof's feats in the Aegean delivered her legendary status back in Greece, which until then, doubtful as the Greeks had not been able to match the professionalism and naval development of their Ottoman neighbours. This was furthered by the Averof's actions in blockading enemy transports during the conflict, which in turn delivered crushing blows to the Turks in the land conflict. The Greeks retained full control of the Aegean Sea during the First Balkan War, giving them a decisive victory in 1913. For much of the First World War, Averof saw little action due to the Greek neutrality. That is until the French intervened in 1916 and took control of the ship. Forced with an ultimatum, Greece joined the Allied powers in June of 1917, and Averof sailed once again to Constantinople, enforcing the surrender of the Ottoman forces. Averof later took part in the 1919 Greco-Turkish War, bombarding the Anatolian coast and evacuating civilians during the Greek withdrawal in 1922. She received a much-needed refit in 1925 at the French La Seine shipyard, receiving new anti-aircraft guns, a tripod mast, fire control equipment, refurbished propulsion gear, and removing her torpedo tubes. Following completion in 1927, Averof once again retained the role as a flagship of the Hellenic fleet, taking part 10 years later in the Coronation Naval Review in 1937. Averof was the only ship presented who had attended the previous Coronation Review in 1911, garnering a special visit from King George VI. In April of 1941, things quickly turned for the Greeks when the Germans joined their Italian counterparts in invading the country. Facing a rapid retreat and defeat, Naval Command ordered that the Averof's crew scuttle the ship to avoid capture. This order was given to the other Greek warships, including the battleship Kilkis, which attempted to get underway, disobeying the command. Averof's captain followed suit and broke the harbour booms to escape under the threat of German aircraft. Kilkis was unfortunately sunk at port, but Averof successfully managed to get away, sailing to Alexandria in Egypt, arriving on the 23rd of April. Averof was in no position to provide any meaningful naval support other than being a convoy escort in the Indian Ocean, where its meager speed and firepower was appropriate for dealing with threats. Ordered to sail out of Bombay, India, Averof departed on the 30th of June to Port Suez, where she aided in the rescue of crew members from the troopship MV Georgios in July. By this time, her boilers were beginning to fail, and Averof could not meet her required speed to be a convoy escort. Hastily done repairs in Port Sudan were made to mend her fuel-spraying apparatus, later heading to Aden by August to escort a convoy to India, arriving in Bombay on the 10th of September. Averof's mechanical problems persisted, and her ability to sustain escort operations was curtailed when on the 28th of September she was forced to abandon a tanker convoy due to boiler problems. Undergoing emergency repairs on the 4th of October, she remained in Bombay for 2 months before sailing again on the 20th of December, this time supporting Allied troop transports destined for Singapore. In January of 1942, the Averof was designated a patrol vessel to provide cover for Allied shipping lanes in the region. She began gunnery drills on the 15th of January after spotting a suspicious vessel days earlier, which would have deafening consequences. During an 8-gun broadside, some of her boiler mounts became unstable, and the boilers fell out onto the engineering deck. Thankfully, they didn't rupture. Repairs in Bombay came again, and Royal Navy sailors subsequently dubbed the ship the Georgios Averof as a troublesome reminder. Averof was repaired to a capability of 12 knots, sent as a guard ship for the Suez Canal in November of 1942. And by October of 1944, the Georgios Averof had regained flagship of the Hellenic Navy in exile, later carrying the exiled Greek government from Cairo to Athens in 1945. After the Second World War, the ship would be used as fleet headquarters till her decommissioning in 1952, and berthed at Poros between 56 and 83. In 1984, the Greek Navy decided to restore the Georgios Averof as a museum ship, anchored at Palau Feliro, being ceremonially commissioned. Averof is still regarded as an active warship, retaining a skeleton crew and carrying the Rear Admiral's flag. Most recently, the ship made its first voyage in 72 years, where it was towed to the Greek city of Thessaloniki after extensive dock work, or dry dock work, on the 5th of October 2017. She was exhibited to the public for a period of 7 weeks before returning to her home port in Palau Faliro. So this vehicle is still technically serving, but not really. The vehicle itself has 4 234mm guns in dual mounts, 8 190mm guns in dual mounts, 16 76mm, 4 47mm, and 3 450mm torpedo tubes. That was its World War I armament. When it comes to its Second World War armament, they removed the torpedo tubes, added some different 76mm in the form of Armstrongs at Mark N guns, and then also added 4 76 12-pounder QF Mark 1 AA guns and 5 2-pounder QF Mark 2 autocannons or 6 20mm AA autocannons as well. So a few configurations for this thing. The only real thing is, which tree do you put it in? The Japanese got the AH-1S Step 3 Cobra, which I'm sure is very different to the other one that we have in-game. The history of the thing starts with, of course, the Bell AH-1. It proved the concept of a small, agile attack helicopter in the skies of Vietnam supporting ground troops. The JGSDF, after testing the concept of support helicopters with stuff such as the UH-1B and also the H-13H, ordered a pair of AH-1S Step 2 Cobras for further testing. After these tests, a slightly improved version was selected for licensed production in 1982, to be specific, the Step 3 Cobra, which we already have in the game, in a couple of variants. After 1991, all newly built H-1Ss were fitted with a CNITE system, a nose-mounted FLIR imaging device, with multiple earlier built AH-1Ss also being refitted with the system. In 2011, one of these AH-1Ss, for the 19th anniversary of the 4th Anti-Tank Helicopter Squadron, was given special markings of the 2nd Lieutenant A.O. Kisurazu, an original character created by members of the squadron. As earlier in the year, there was the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami. One of the markings that was added on the tail was Our Hearts Together, Let's Go Japan. The costs of creating these markings, as well as applying them, reportedly costs 150,000 Japanese currency, and this was collected by the unit with a fundraiser, as it was an unofficial celebration. In 2012, this was doubled, but due to receiving so much attention, this was also the last year of the IVATH, had the ability to create more Kisurazu sisters as the higher-ups got wind of what was going on, and even though it created a lot of good PR, weren't pleased. In the end, 2013 was the last time the Kisurazu sisters were used, but they still live on in model kits as well as in, of course, game, in the form of leading Private Wakana Kisurazu and First Lieutenant Akane Kisurazu. So if you're a weeb and you want another vehicle with a different decal on it, which basically acts the same, but because you're a weeb, you are weirdly infantilized with these things, then you can get it. There's also another Tiger. This is the HAC. It was a variant of the Tiger helicopter, and the story of its life is fairly brief since it never actually entered production. The vehicle, however, could help resolve some stuff in the game for France, giving it a bit of a buff. The HAC variant was to be a model for France specialized in anti-tank combat. This role was put in the name HAC, which stands for Helicopter Anti-Char. For all intents and purposes, the HAC is identical to the German Tiger UHT. They were the same vehicle, just with different names, and being designed to use the same weapon system, which, of course, is the Trigat missile, also known as the Pars missile for Germany. This is a fire-and-forget air-to-surface missile with an in-game range of 7 kilometers. France had originally planned to acquire some 10 HAC models, but eventually chose not to go through with that order, instead choosing to have its fleet consist fully of the more multi-purpose HAP and HAD variants. The reason for this sudden change of course was in fact the Trigat program. This was a project for a new European anti-tank missile. France, however, decided to quit this program, instead choosing to buy Hellfires from the US. This was already after firing tests had been concluded with the missiles from the prototype HAC helicopters. Without the main missile system for the helicopter, the vehicle found itself without a real purpose and was therefore cancelled. Armament on the HAC and UHT helicopters are slightly different. The HAC being able to carry the aforementioned Trigat missile, the 12 and 22 SNEB pods, 30mm guns, 20mm pods, and also the Mistral AA missile. The next one is for the Sikhorsky, the armed Black Hawk demonstrator, and this article is written horrifically, so I would really like if people would check these things before they pass them to developers. In the 2000s, Sikhorsky proposed a new version of the Black Hawk helicopter for the Air 87 program, which was going to be for Australia's next attack helicopter. The new armed Black Hawk demonstrator was nicknamed the Battle Hawk, and the Team Battle Hawk, led by Sikhorsky Company, consisted of other leading advanced technologies such as companies from General Electric, Rockwell Collins, GIAT, and Hamilton Standard. Israel Elbit Systems signed a contract with Sikhorsky to upgrade and convert the Black Hawk helicopters to armed reconnaissance and also attacked versions. Under the contract, the Elbit system provided helmet-mounted displays, targeting sensors, store management computers, and other components of the upgraded configuration, and was responsible for also weapon integration. The test flight for the armed Black Hawk demonstrator began in September of 2008 with cooperation between Sikhorsky Company and the Israeli government, with Elbit Systems Limited, which took charge for the mission computer systems and weapon system integration. This helps create a technology demonstration for this program for tests by the Israeli Air Force. And the summed up demonstrator program with Israel was an opportunity for worldwide Sikhorsky customers to watch the aircraft up close. Test pilot Bill Fell showed up a instruction of the ABH demonstrator cockpit functions while the aircraft was on static display, and after cockpit demonstration ended, customers were also visited a military shooting range to watch the live fire demonstration. Yada yada yada. The armament on this thing is a 20mm GIAT THL-20 autocannon. It could also use Hellfire series and Spike series air-to-ground missiles under a 4 wing pylons, 70mm Hydra unguided rockets, and also a flare and chaff dispenser. So this would very much be an air-to-ground machine with not many air-to-air capabilities. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you later on. I'd just like to thank Nicholas Richardson, Elove Goat, Pyman675, Winter Scientist, Merciless Reaper, Jerry Prevolt, Megadino King, Orange Tail, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, Uncle Bean, Sem Arslan, Derek R., Bareen, Lafouche, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.